Look at that crispy audio. So a bit of a snafu. I fucked up. Turns out I didn't keep myself in the frame. Great interview with Jaime Lipowitz from High Buds Club. We were going to do a conversational style interview, and I cut myself out of the frame. We're going to turn this into a good story, and I guess now we're launching a podcast. Woo! So you can listen still on YouTube and IGTV, but I've also launched a SoundCloud. Link everything below. So here we go to the interview.
Hi, I'm Jaime. I am the founder and CEO of High Buds Club.
What does High Buds Club do?
High Buds Club is a members-only club for budtenders and cannabis professionals in Canada. We focus on exclusive events, dope opportunities for budtenders, and a place for them to connect and learn.
Cool. How many members do you have?
That is top secret, right?
Top secret, of course. How did you get into the cannabis side? Obviously, I'm a cannabis intender, as I know you are.
Yeah.
So Jaime and I also worked in conjunction with each other in the advertising industry. So I know you're a cannabis intender. So where did this come from? Where did it go? I know you were with IDEON before.
Yeah, so I had been in media and had a pretty sweet gig, and the only way I can put it is I got an opportunity in cannabis and it like set my soul on fire. I couldn't not go do it.
Gotcha.
There was no other option for me. And so I jumped in and worked for a company called Mary Jane, which is a cannabis media company. And at the time, Mary Jane was the AOR for Canopy Growth.
Okay.
So I got a very fast,
full in depth, right to the thick of the globally traded global holding company with a bunch of different brands on it.
Exactly. So I joined right at legalization, so It was super exciting.
Yeah.
And for 9 months, I essentially got an inside look at everything that Canopy needed.
Yeah.
So either what they were already buying for their supply chain, for media, for whatever, or what they were looking for and what they needed to buy, but nobody was offering them.
Gotcha.
And so very early on, I was on a market tour in California with a few members of the trade marketing team.
That'd be sick.
It was, I was like,
that would be dope.
I literally was like, wait, my job right now is to go around LA and take people to dispensaries.
So that I totally relate to that feeling, because at Lyft it was one thing. Doing the work that I did with Lyft, it was one thing, but they were banners. But now when I'm forward facing and seeing the people within the industry, and like there's so many different people, but also it's fucking weed. I'm in weed now.
I just it was almost like my pinch me, like my 21-year-old self, and as a cannabis intender, I hope my mother isn't watching this. I have bought weed in just about every country I've ever been to for the last 15 years. You know, when I jumped into the cannabis industry, I think a lot of people were really surprised by the move. A lot of my family was very surprised by it. But I think that goes back to stigma. It's like, if you actually knew anything, you'd know that I've been smoking weed for 20 years now, every day. And just because I'm a high functioning adult and a total type A overachiever, people are like, but you're so successful. Totally. And they're not, one thing has nothing to do with the other. But anyway, so when I was on that dispensary tour, I had this aha moment. I was going, and I am a completely visual person. I love brands. I love branding. I was 100% the 19-year-old girl in the LCBO buying the prettiest bottle of wine. And so until I learned about wine. And I went to buy a vape pen, and I was like, hey, can I get that one? And the bud tender said to me, why do you want this one? I actually don't recommend that. I think this one's better. And I was like, okay, why? And they were the exact same price. So she wasn't trying to upsell me. It was not anything about that. It was around taste, around the quality, around the battery quality. It was the actual product. And the brand that she recommended was Heavy Hitters, which is not a brand that is on brand for me.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. It looks like no, with all due respect, something you would
like a dude.
It's like a dude's brand, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna jump on my motorcycle and like smoke this.
Thank you.
You know? And it would not have been something that I ever would have asked
the
about.
The forward-facing brand didn't appeal to your senses whatsoever.
Correct. But I bought it.
Yeah.
And I remember leaving that interaction and going, wait a minute, she completely shifted me.
Yeah.
Based on, like, very little info.
Yeah.
It was just, this is my opinion, and because it's not an evolved category, I was like, the bud tender means everything.
Yeah.
It was just very, very simple to me, was that the bud tender meant everything. The other part of this was when I got into advertising, back in its heyday, when we were charging $20 CPMs for things that cost $2.
The grimy ad network days.
the good old ad network days.
Yeah.
We would have all these parties.
Yeah.
We would have the NABS parties and these parties.
Yeah. And the olive parties.
And the olive parties. But it was the first time that I had ever been in an industry.
Yeah.
And so I loved the sense of belonging.
Yeah.
I loved that I would see
vendors. I got goosebumps when you said that, because it's similar. I find I'm the exact same, where I've latched onto this industry as my former advertising industry, but this one seems, because it's less evolved in its state, it feels like I'm more a part of it, because like I was getting too old for the advertising industry, right? When I was less than 30 when I was at Olive.
Yeah.
I'm halfway to 40 at this point, right? So I'm like, I'm looking at it going, I'm getting too old for this shit, but I've latched on to this community.
So I was like, okay, wait. So I loved that.
Yeah.
And I knew that as part of like the cannabis industry, we have an industry. So you look on LinkedIn and you can connect with marketing managers or growers or whatever the case is. But bud tenders didn't have an industry.
Yeah.
And bud tenders didn't have anything to feel a part of or belong to.
Yeah.
And then my third insight was that this business, or this industry rather, was being built from the top down.
Yeah.
And in actuality, that's wrong.
For sure.
It needs to be built from the bottom up.
Yep.
Because the bud tenders are the ones every day that are answering questions, that are smashing the stigmas, that are taking somebody who might have been canna curious into a canna consumer.
Yeah.
And that is a job that is so important and it's so valuable. And I knew they weren't going to get the respect that they needed. Yeah. They weren't going to get to
make it a career, right? Like that. I've had that conversation a couple times where there's a stigma associated with it not being a career. When in actual fact, it's the diverse set of people that are doing it make it a career. The valuable information that they're giving to their consumer base, it's a career.
Totally. And it was those three things. Yeah. I was like, they're not going to have an industry. They're not going to be respected in the way that they need to be. Yeah. And they hold a ton of power in the marketing funnel.
For sure. And even to your point of it being off brand for you, if that feedback loop were to continue, right? The bud tender's able to adjust that marketing accordingly to make it speak to whatever it is and make their categories that significantly better.
Yeah. So then it was like, okay, I have this insight. I know that retail has not really, at that point, retail hadn't not opened up in Ontario yet. Yeah. This was February last year. Retail opened up in April. Yeah. And I was like, there's something here. I just knew. Yeah. I was like, I don't know what it is, but there's something here.
You knew that without even seeing the retail opportunity.
Totally.
Awesome.
Exactly. I've created marketing programs essentially my whole career. For sure. Like, there was a little insight there.
Of course.
And so what I did was I was like, okay, brand first. Yeah. I built a brand, which I laugh at because just because you make like iconography and fonts does not mean you have a brand. Yeah. And I did two things. I threw up a website, like I said, and I started going to dispensaries. Yeah. And I started just talking to budtenders, like straight up, just like asking questions, seeing what they knew, seeing how much they knew, seeing if they were able to shift me from one purchase to another or something else. And then I got on LinkedIn and I was like, started just messaging budtenders.
LinkedIn is by far the best. But like for me, for my money, where I see the cannabis, I mean, you know, advertising restrictions aside, the most interaction I get is from Instagram, but LinkedIn far and beyond, because it has a category, right? It's searchable.
Right. Exactly. And so I just started telling people about my idea, and I didn't know if it had legs, and I didn't know if it was viable, if anybody would even give a fuck about it, like any of those things. But I was like, gotta try.
For sure.
And very quickly I was like, holy fuck. They love this. They're so receptive to it. And so I created a digital community, which was like, I was like, hey, marketing 101, let me see if I get any engagement. And I started getting engagement, and I was like, oh, they're really into this. And so then I was like, let me see if brands are going to be into this. And so I built a sales deck. And I went out and started talking to people, and that's essentially how this was born.
That's sick. Have you found, like, you touched on a couple things for me that coming from the advertising industry and coming from you talked about the top down and that being built, and I mean we saw that in our old industry with the Facebooks, Googles, Amazons, and what have you, right? So I'm very attuned to that structure, and I think that cannabis as an industry can probably break that, or break that cycle of that happening. But have you not also noticed that it seems like the cannabis community is by far the most open one I've ever been in.
1,000%.
Like the people are ready, willing, and able to talk to you about anything, their idea, your idea, or just weed in general. And which is, to me, coming again, marketing jaded guy, it's so refreshing to have people that are as passionate, have equal passion for it as me.
So I half agree with that statement. I find that the people who are willing and open to having conversations, talking about your ideas, are the ones that are passionate as fuck. The ones who are in this just for a paycheck.
Fair. So that's something that I haven't come across either, because the people that contact me are the ones that want free shit from me. So it's built on that passion. So yeah, my exposure is probably limited to that side, but totally get the point.
You look at I remember CanTrust, the person who handles my investments when in the heyday of the cannabis stocks, told me to buy CanTrust. And I was like, I don't want to buy that stock. And he's like, why? And I was like, the CEO doesn't smoke weed. Straight up.
Wow.
How am I going to trust my money to build a company on a product that you know nothing about? And so he ends up convincing me to buy this stock. Why? It's a great buy.
He doesn't know weed, so he does know management. So it's going to be this. It'll turn over or something like that.
And so against my instincts, I listened. That was not a great day for me. CanTrust stock bombed, but another story for another day. But this is run by a person who sees opportunity and not run by somebody who really cares. And they're two different things.
Totally. So I would agree. I would agree that there's obviously, you've seen that. My exposure has been limited on that degree because everybody's jazzed up.
Totally. But when you find the people who give a fuck and who are excited, you can talk for days.
Sure.
They're very open. They're very willing to connect. They want to hear your ideas. They want to hear about you. They want to hear about.
And even for myself, it's great to know that it's not just like high functioning potheads like us. Like it's not. There's a community of those people. There's not for me to think of it as the weed stigma and the people associated with it. I've never talked to anybody that's like, yo, bro, what up, man? Like they're always intelligent. They're always elegant and eloquent, right? Like the conversations I see on LinkedIn are phenomenal. So you touched on stigma.
Yes.
I know that there's an inherent mistrust of the cannabis industry within my family. So I see that from a bunch of different angles. I see the how cannabis has been stigmatized, and kind of the direct, not directly affecting me, but the effect that it has on the industry. How have you approached that, and how do you see that?
So, in the beginning, I think I was not as open.
Yeah.
And now 2 years in, I really don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like it's this is how I make my living.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that.
Totally.
And I think that there needs to be more examples of women like me
Totally.
who are high functioning and open and proud about their cannabis use.
Totally. So that was part two of that question, because you did mention the, again, like a strong female lead,
Yeah.
that smokes weed every day, and when it comes across as a surprise to certain people, obviously you've confronted that or seen that, but is there a share of community in that?
Yeah, I mean, it like when you see it and when you experience it, it's like it's a little bit unsettling because you're like, what are you in like the 1800s?
Yeah.
Like you like
Yeah.
I mean, you can go off with your anti-maskers, but
Yeah.
like
Like, I can vote, right? Like, fuck off.
but I sort of I mean, there's a part of me that really loves the shock of it.
Yeah.
On my my signature is a picture of me backstage at a Snoop Dogg concert smoking a blunt.
Perfect. Yeah. So
And
it's the shock value. I mean, you and I have that in common too. We are both known to say fuck a lot.
yeah,
So
like
so the shock value part of it is definitely a personality quirk of mine.
I mean, listen, I how do I phrase this? I like to make people feel things.
Yeah.
And so whether it's you're on my side, you're on my team, you love me,
Yeah.
or on the polar opposite of
Yeah.
it of like, what the fuck is
Yeah.
that girl on? I don't fuck with her.
Yeah.
At least you felt something.
Yeah, totally. An interaction, a thumbs down is as good as a thumbs up
Totally.
on YouTube, right?
I'm always worried when people don't feel anything.
Yeah.
Because like the opposite of love isn't
Well,
hate, it's indifference.
For sure, because you haven't struck a chord, right? So how do I have to change my message? It's me that gets impacted by that.
I mean, Madonna once said like, bitch, if you're hating on me, you're still a fan.
Yeah,
you're still
for
watching
sure.
what I'm doing.
For
You're
sure.
still a fan.
For sure.
And so that's been interesting to let go of. Like, I don't need to be everybody's friend. I
Yeah.
can be a little bit controversial. There's gonna be people who don't like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But so what?
Fuck it.
I got one life.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So what's the actual? We talked a lot about the industry and that kind of thing. So what's the actual application? So I'm not signed up. I haven't signed in. So
I wouldn't accept you anyway.
Exactly. So what happens? What happens behind that curtain?
Yeah, so we've got a great digital community that's super active. We really, they're like very engaged, very involved. So there's a lot of discussion around products and brand. Education's a big tenet of the club. I also do some like perks for the members. So they get some, things to try,
Awesome.
which I think is also very important. And that triggers a lot of conversation. And so really it's
it really is the community, right?
Yeah.
Like it's an open, no holds barred community of budtenders.
Totally. I want to elevate the budtender. I want the budtender. I want it to be thought of as a career. I want it to be respected. And I want to give the budtenders all the tools that they need to succeed. And the reason I say that is it goes back to the stigma. And so I think they're the ones every day on the front lines, breaking the stigma, educating the consumers, potential consumers, kind of curious, and they need a space and a place
Yep.
to ask questions, to get respect, and to get some fucking epic perks.
Yep.